Girlfriend wants an open relationship, confessed having someone already in mind, and now everyone insists I should reconsider. I've known her for as long as I can remember. Our parents were college friends and decided to move close to each other, so we basically grew up side by side seeing each other almost every single day, weekends included, even outside of school. Looking back, I'm pretty sure our parents were hoping something would happen between us. And it did. I asked her out when we were in high school, and honestly, those were some of the happiest years of my life. After graduation, we even took a gap year to just travel together, soaking in every moment. Last year, I moved on to my university campus because there's no way I was going to survive a 2-hour train commute every morning just to make it by 8 a.m. Meanwhile, she stayed with her parents since her college was only a 10-minute drive from our neighborhood. Even so, I tried my best to visit every weekend, unless my studies got in the way. 2 weeks ago, while I was visiting her, I noticed she seemed off. It was the same kind of anxious energy she'd get when she was hiding a surprise gift from me, so I kept wondering what was up. Eventually, she came clean. She brought up the idea of having an open relationship. I can't even describe what that felt like. I'd never considered being in an open relationship. Stuff like intimacy is something I can only share with one person. So there I am, sitting there, completely blindsided as the girl I literally imagined marrying starts telling me she wants to sleep around. I guess at that point I had to ask, did she already have anybody in mind? She got fidgety again, and then finally admits there is someone. That's the moment I lost control. I didn't scream, but I did snap and shouted at her, fired off accusations about her being unfaithful, and probably said a bunch of other things I regret now. Suddenly she's in tears, full on ugly, crying and apologizing, begging me not to just leave, so angry, pleading for us to talk it out. But I couldn't take it. I grabbed my jacket and just walked out. That ended up being a 4-hour trip back to campus instead of my usual 2, since fewer trains run at night. All I could do was sit there, stewing in anger and shock. By the next day, it seemed my mom had somehow already found out everything. She called, but I still hadn't cooled down at all. So I just let loose over the phone, called my girlfriend unfaithful and said some really harsh stuff. That set my mom off. She flipped, but I just hung up. From then on, my mom kept calling and messaging me every day. I tried to ignore it, but my breaking point came when my dad, the one person who never gets involved in things like this, called me up. He told me I should at least talk to my girlfriend, hear her out, and then mentioned she hadn't been eating or going to her classes. I know her parents probably told my parents that just to guilt trip me, but hearing it from my dad really threw me. Now I'm caught in this place where I don't know what to do. My dad never steps into stuff like this, yet here he is. Part of me thinks I should just move on, but the other part of me wonders if I should at least give her a chance to explain herself, if only for the sake of closure. I just can't decide if hearing her out is the right thing to do, or if it'll just make everything even messier. Then, this morning, my phone rang over and over my mom. Turns out my girlfriend had attempted suicide by hanging and was now in the hospital. I honestly don't remember much from the phone call, my mind just kind of blanked out. But I rushed home as fast as I could, and ended up spending, $800 or $900 on a taxi? It's weird that I remember that little detail, but barely remember my mom telling me my girlfriend had attempted suicide. Maybe my brain is just too broken to process what really matters right now. At the hospital, when I arrived, my girlfriend's mom slapped me. Maybe I deserved it. Maybe I didn't. I don't even know at this point. My head's such a mess right now. I remember yelling at her, after she slapped me, because why am I being blamed for all of this? I'm drowning in stress, just suffocating under this avalanche of things going wrong. Why me? I haven't hurt anyone. I honestly don't understand why this is happening to me. Just a month ago, everything was normal. Everything was fine. Why couldn't she just have been normal and not ask that stupid question? If there's anything good left, it's my dad. He took me back home after the shouting match in the hospital, and right now, I'm just sitting here, drinking beers with him. Just the two of us. I love my dad, and I'm grateful he's staying by my side. I don't know what I'd do without him. Update 2. I didn't sleep. My dad and I went back to the hospital first thing, coffee that tasted like cardboard in my stomach and this weird buzzing in my head that wouldn't shut up. The ICU nurse told us she was awake and breathing on her own, then some psych doctor with a clipboard explained the 72-hour hold and used soft words for sharp things. I nodded because speaking felt like standing on thin glass. Her mom wouldn't look at me. Her dad did, and I could tell he'd cried for real, the kind that leaves your eyes raw. He asked if I wanted to see her, and before I could answer the nurse said one at a time, 5 minutes, no phones, no dramatics. I went in. She was pale, hair a mess, hospital gown swallowing her up, and the second she saw me her face crumpled. My chest did this awful thing like someone had reached through my ribs and twisted. She tried to sit up and the monitor beeped and I just put my hand on the rail because if I touched her I was going to fall apart. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was sandpaper. "I'm so sorry." I asked if she'd slept. Stupid question. I asked if she was in pain. Stupid. I asked if there was anyone I should call. Even worse. She shook her head and cried quietly and finally I asked the one thing that's been a knife in my head since this started: had anything already happened with him? Her mouth opened and for a second I saw us as we were last year, cut and pasted over a scene that didn't fit. "There isn't a him," she said. "It's Hannah." I didn't understand it, first. She said it again. "It's Hannah. The someone is Hannah." She looked at me like she was handing me something fragile and poisonous at the same time. I felt my ears ring. I asked if she meant. And she nodded. She said she didn't cheat, that nothing happened, that she told Hannah no because she loved me, and then she said the words "I'm scared I'm not straight," and I finally had to grab the rail with both hands because the room tilted. She told me she thought if I knew, I'd leave, and if she buried it, it would grow teeth. So she tried to build a third road. Open felt like maybe we could both breathe while she figured herself out, and she knows how bad that sounds now, and she knows she broke my trust anyway, and she said again she was sorry like the word could stack into a bridge. Her 5 minutes were up and the nurse did the gentle hand thing by the door. I stepped out into the hallway and that's when her dad stopped me with this quiet voice that felt heavier than any shouting. He said he wanted me to know she'd been in therapy last winter, that first year of college wrecked her and she'd been doing better, and then she stopped going because she said she felt fine, and then exams and family stuff and me moving and the whole adult life avalanche, and he wasn't making excuses, he just wanted me to have the whole picture, not the one the moms painted in rage. I believed him because the next thing that happened made every rumor feel cheap. A nurse came up with her bag and said they needed a phone charger and if any of us had her passcode, and her mom pushed it into my hand like it burned her. I told the nurse I didn't know the code and then my dad, bless him, goes, "It's the dog's birthday," which is such a ridiculous thing to be right about, but it was. I handed it straight back but the lock screen lit up with a text from Hannah that said, "I'm outside but I won't come in, tell me if you need anything." My stomach flipped. I went downstairs. I don't even know why. Curiosity, self-harm, whatever you want to call it. She was there by the entrance with a tote bag and eyes like she hadn't slept either, holding a ridiculous plastic-wrapped bouquet from the hospital gift shop like it could buy forgiveness. When she realized who I was, her shoulders fell an inch and she started to say my name and then stopped because I have that look on my face when I'm about to sprint or swing. She talked anyway. She told me she didn't push it. She told me she told my girlfriend to talk to me, to talk to a therapist, to not do anything until we were okay or not okay. She said she was sorry for existing in the radius. She said she understood if I hate her, and I told her hate wasn't the word, that I didn't have a word for any of this, and that it wasn't her fault I'd been building a future like a Lego castle and now it was somehow apples and electricity and none of it matched. I went back upstairs because standing next to a stranger holding flowers for the girl I thought I'd marry is a kind of humiliation I didn't know had its own flair. In the waiting area my mom and her mom were arguing in those low tight voices people use when they want to scream but don't want to get thrown out by security. My dad and her dad were at opposite ends of a row of plastic chairs, looking like bookends that used to hold up the same shelf. I did something I don't usually do. I cut straight into the middle. I asked my mom, in front of everybody, why she told me my girlfriend had just asked a question and then told their side that I'd called her names for no reason, and how exactly all of this became a soap opera she got to narrate when she left half the plot out. Her face went hard and then soft and then she started crying again and saying she thought giving me time would make me come back on my own and she didn't want to scare the dads because she didn't think it was that serious, and saying all of it out loud made her so small I almost couldn't be angry anymore. Almost. Her mom didn't slap me this time. She stared at the floor for a long time and then said, I was wrong, like it cost her teeth, and it made me want to sit on the floor and be a kid again and let the silence fix things. That's not how any of this works. They let me see her again at noon. This time she talked the whole time. Not fast, not manic, just a string of truths you say when you've already crashed through the worst part. She told me she loved me and she loved me and she loved me, and it felt like a confession and a goodbye in the same breath. She said she wanted me in her life, even if it wasn't the way we planned, but she also said she wouldn't ask me for anything anymore because she'd already asked me for too much. She said she wrote a letter and it's in the side pocket of her backpack and could I please read it when I'm not shaking. I read it in the car, with my dad on the drive back. He kept his hands on 10, and 2, like we were teenagers again. I'm not going to write the whole thing here because it feels like taking a picture of something sacred, but she wrote about kissing me in the rain under the bus stop in 10th grade and how she still catalogs the way my hair goes stupid when I'm tired. And then she wrote about sitting in a lecture and realizing she was watching the girl 2 rows down instead of the professor and how she shoved the thought so deep she could barely breathe. And then she wrote about trying to fold it into something we could both live with and instead cutting us both. When we got home, my dad put the letter on the kitchen table and made pasta like it was first aid. My phone kept buzzing on the counter and I let it. And when I finally picked it up, there was a voicemail from the internship supervisor asking if I was okay and telling me to take the week. It should have felt like relief. It didn't. It felt like someone had decided to press pause on the movie at the worst possible frame. I don't know what happens next. That's the most honest thing I've ever written. I know I can't be her boyfriend right now. Maybe not ever again. The word forever used to be a house I could walk through in the dark without bumping into anything. Now I'm standing outside looking at a blueprint and realizing I can't read. I'm going back to the hospital tomorrow with a book she loves because sitting there empty-handed felt wrong. I'm going to tell her I want her to live, even if it means I have to learn how to love her in a way that doesn't look like what we used to have. I'm going to tell my mom to stop turning pain into politics. I'm going to keep breathing until my chest stops hurting. That's the plan. I can make it 2 in the morning with a pasta hangover and a letter on the table. Update 3. I went back with the book. It's this battered copy of The Night Circus she's loved to the point the spine looks like a broken wrist. The psych unit is down a hallway that smells like wet paper and citrus cleaner, with a door that opens only if the nurse holds a badge to a square that beeps. Like a microwave. They took my backpack and made me empty my pockets, and I signed my name on a sticker that went on my chest like I was applying for a job as myself, visitor. It felt performative and also like armor. She was in a chair by the window with a blanket that had a pattern of triangles, ankles crossed, hospital socks with the rubber dots, hair braided wrong like she'd date it without a mirror. She smiled, a small, shy thing that didn't touch the bruised places, and patted the chair next to her like we were at a bus stop again. I gave her the book and she held it with both hands the way you hold a baby plant. I told her I wouldn't stay long. I told her that because it felt kind. The truth was I didn't trust my throat to last. She'd slept. Not well, but she'd slept. She told me Dr. Lin wanted a family meeting, and then said the words with air quotes like a teenager. She rolled her eyes in a way that made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. She said she was going to be discharged to the regular floor later if she kept her numbers good, and then to the partial program after the hold, which is like school but for your head. She said it the way you learn a foreign word and say it too carefully. I told her I'd come to the meeting. I told her I brought sticky tabs because she likes to tag her favorite sentences. It came out like a joke and landed like a promise. The meeting was at 2 in the small conference room with a fake plant and a clock that ticked like it was teasing us. Dr. Lin had soft eyes and a hard ponytail and said the shape of our names right. My dad sat on my left. Her dad sat on her right. Our moms were across from us like a mirror I didn't want to look into. Dr. Lin set ground rules and I could feel everyone bristle at the word rules. Then she did this thing where she didn't let any of us jump ahead. She put the brakes on every sentence that started to turn into a courtroom speech. My girlfriend talked first. She talked slow like she was laying down planks at it over a river. She said she was scared and she'd been scared for months, and it wasn't about me not being enough, and it wasn't about wanting to collect experiences like air miles. It was about waking up in a body that keeps pointing in a direction you didn't plan for and deciding if you break yourself and have to please a map or you draw a new one and risk losing your travel buddy. Her mom made a small noise. Dr. Lin gave her a look that said not now without using syllables. I said my piece. I said I loved her, and the love wasn't a question on a multiple choice test I could bubble again with a new pencil. I said I couldn't be her boyfriend. Not now. Maybe not ever. Saying maybe felt like cracking glass on purpose, but saying never felt like slamming a door on my own hand. I said I wanted her alive more than I wanted our old life. The word alive made the room go so quiet I could hear the clock find its next second. Her dad breathed out like he'd been holding it since Wednesday. He said he wanted his daughter to come home, whenever home was, wherever it was, and that he could learn new maps. Her mom said, "What if this is just a phase?" And the second her mouth made the shape of phase, my mom flinched like someone else had been hit. Dr. Lin didn't let her finish. She talked about safety plans and reasons to stay and locking up anything that looked like a bad idea when you're sad at 2 in the morning. She asked me if I was safe and I said no, and then corrected it to I don't know, and then corrected that to I'm getting there. It felt like trying on shoes. After, they said we could take her outside to the little garden if she wore the bright orange badge. The garden is really a rectangle of patience with a bench and a tree that looks like it got planted out of guilt. She sat in the sun and watched a bee get lost in the same flower 3 times, and I told her about my internship supervisor telling me to take the week. Small talk like sandbags. Then she said she wanted me to go to the house and grab her yellow hoodie and her journal and the Polaroid stuck in the mirror because she didn't want to see the empty mirror first thing if she came home. She said please and then apologized for saying please. I told her to stop apologizing to me for existing. I sounded like someone's older brother and also like a YouTube video of a therapist. Her dad gave me the spare key and drove me because he didn't trust me not to get lost in nostalgia and forget which way a road works. The house looked like it was holding its breath. Her mom's shoes were by the door like punctuation. Her room was the same and not the same, and my stomach did that water park drop. The hoodie was on the back of her chair and her journal was on the bedside table under a stack of hair ties. When I pulled it out, a second envelope fell, addressed to me. It said, "If I didn't get to tell you." My hands went sweat cold. Her dad was standing in the hallway pretending to read a framed quote about family. I told him I found something I shouldn't open. He took it the way you take a match away from a kid who's curious and sad. Back at the hospital, I handed it to Dr. Lin in front of my girlfriend and said I didn't want to be the only person with that kind of detonator. My girlfriend put her fist to her eyes and nodded so hard her braid fell apart. On the way out, a nurse asked if we could help with her phone again because she needed to give the partial program her email. Her mom gave it to me like a hot pan. I opened the lock screen with the stupid dog's birthday and started to look for settings and made the mistake of seeing the previews. There at the top was a text from my mother from last night, sent at 3:11 am. It said, "You will not drag my son and my family into your confusion. Break up quietly and I will help you fix this. Do not contact him again." My name wasn't in it, but it landed like a slap anyway. I put the phone down like it had turned into a knife. My dad saw my face and asked, and I showed him because secrets are acid. The next thing that happened did not feel cinematic. It felt dumb and human and loud. I walked out to the vending machines and called my mom. She answered with that breathless hello you use when you're already sorry. I read her message to her word for word. I asked who she was trying to help with that. She started crying and told me she was trying to protect me and this family and our history, and she panicked and she didn't mean it, and what kind of mother would she be if she watched me drown? I told her I don't need a lifeguard who pushes other swimmers under. My dad took the phone and said he was coming home with me that night, and my mom went very quiet and said okay in a voice I've never heard from her in my entire life. It made me think of floors giving way. When I went back upstairs, my girlfriend was on the bed with her knees pulled up, book open, finger keeping a place. I sat and told her what happened with my mom, because we're not doing half stories anymore. She shut her eyes and breathed, like she was smelling rain. She said thank you for not letting the be invisible. She said the word thank you like the words, I trust you are hiding clumsy behind it. Then she told me something I didn't know was still possible. I made her laugh. Not big. Small. This hiccup of a sound when I told her my dad made pasta again and burnt the garlic like a criminal. Hannah texted, while I was there. It popped up on the screen because the world has no sense of comedic timing. It said, I brought the thing from your locker. Leaving it with the nurse. The nurse came in a minute later with a tote bag. Inside was a sweatshirt and a notebook and a pack of Polaroids held together with a rubber band. The first picture was of us at that cheap Italian place on our last night before I moved, both of us red-faced from the wine we pretended not to taste the cheapness of, my girlfriend mid-eye roll. Behind it was a picture of a dog that wasn't ours with Hannah's handwriting on the back that said, practice dog so you stop stealing mine. My girlfriend put that one face down without talking. Then she looked at me and said, you can meet her. When it's not a hospital. If you want. If you don't want, that's okay. The fact that she could say those sentences without trying to steer me toward one of them felt like proof of something raw and good under all this mess. At 6 they kicked me out because visiting hours are a wall you can't argue with. In the parking lot, my dad unlocked the car and then didn't start it. He said he was proud of me in this tired way that made it mean more. We drove home the long way because lights make me nervous now. At a stop sign, I told him I'm going to find a therapist, not because I'm broken, but because holding a person and a goodbye in your mouth at the same time is above my pay grade. He said he knew a guy. He'd always knows a guy. It made me feel 13 again and safe in a way I thought my body had forgotten. When we got to the house, my mom had set 2 plates on the table and then gone to the bedroom. The plates were empty. It looked like she'd started to do a normal and lost the recipe. I knocked on their door and told her I loved her and I needed silence from her for a while. Not punishment. Space. She said okay without trying to bargain and tucked her knees up like a kid. I don't know what's happening to our parents, but I know some lies break like glass and some peel off like old stickers, and this one felt like both. At 11, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. It was a landline from the unit. She'd used the desk phone, because hers was charging. She said, "Good night," and then, "I read the chapter where the tent smells like caramel and smoke," and then, "Do you remember the bus stop?" And I said yes, and she said, "I didn't know who I was yet," and I said, "Me neither, Anne." That was the truest good night I've ever said to anyone. I'm meeting Dr. Lin tomorrow to go over the discharge plan like a real adult who can point to future tense verbs without crying. I'm going to bring the hoodie and the tags for her book and probably something dumb like gummy bears because her mouth goes sore from hospital food. If the weather holds, I'll sit in the rectangle of patience and read to her until the sun moves off the bench and we both have to go back inside. There are 100 ways this becomes a smaller story with bruises that fade. There are also cliffs I can't see yet. I'm not going to pretend I'm not scared. But tonight, my house is quiet in a way that isn't empty. My dad is breathing on the couch like a metronome. The letter is with the doctor and not in my pocket like a loaded coin. Her book is on my nightstand, open to the place she smiled. For the first time in a week, I want to sleep. Not to run away. To rest. Update 4. Discharge day didn't feel like release. It felt like someone opened a door to a balcony and asked us all to pretend the drop wasn't there. The sky did that washed out blue that makes every building look like old Tupperware. I brought the hoodie, the gummy bears, the sticky tabs. I stuck a yellow one on the first page she dog-eared in the night circus because it made her roll her eyes and breathe different, which is how she laughs now. They moved us to a small room that had 2 chairs that were too soft and a clock that lied by at least 3 minutes. Dr. Lin was there with a folder that looked exactly like every ending I've ever signed for. My mom wasn't. She'd texted me a long paragraph that could have been an apology or an alibi depending on the angle. I didn't answer. Her dad came. My dad came. Her mom came and kept her hands laced together so hard her knuckles looked like chalk. Before papers, Dr. Lin asked about the envelope. If I didn't get to tell you one. I said I didn't open it. I said I didn't want that kind of ghost living in my pocket. She asked if we wanted to open it together or give it back to the universe uncracked. My girlfriend squeezed the triangle blanket and said we should open it there because secrets are acid and she was tired of being burned. So we did. She read it. Out loud. It wasn't a will or a petition. It was a map of the last 2 months written in the voice she uses when she calls me from the grocery store to ask which pasta is the normal one. She wrote about getting dizzy at a red light and having to pull over because a Katy Perry song came on the radio and made her cry, which is not a sentence I thought would ever exist. She wrote about thinking maybe she could braid this into her life like you braid ribbon into hair, and then realizing ribbon becomes a noose if you're tired enough. She wrote my name like it was trying to apologize for all the time she'd said it without telling me this part. I did it cry. I did the other thing where your face tries to stay still while your throat throws rocks at a fence. After, Dr. Lin handed me a pen and said, "You can't write him a letter too." I said I didn't have a him. She said, "I meant you." It hit my sternum in this stupid way and I put the pen down because if I started, I didn't know if I could stop and they still had paperwork. We signed. She signed more things than I did. She clipped the orange badge off and put it in the pocket of the hoodie like a keepsake and then laughed at herself and handed it back to the nurse. They gave us a paper with a schedule for the partial program, which lives in a building that used to be a bank and now holds people instead of money. Mornings group, afternoons individual, family days on alternate Tuesdays. It looked like someone had tried to make a calendar into a life raft. In the atrium, Hannah was there again. She had a different tote bag and the same wrecked eyes. She didn't come closer. She did this small wave like you do to a baby on a bus you don't want to scare. My girlfriend waved back and then looked at me like I got to choose. I walked over because walking away felt meaner. Up close, Hannah's freckles looked like someone tried to remember a constellation and got most of it right. She said, "Hi," in a voice like stepping on a question mark. I said hi back and then said, "I don't know how to do this." She nodded like she'd been practicing the motion. She said she wasn't going to orbit our herd and call it help. She said if we needed a ride or a casserole or someone to tell the moms to shut up, she was available, but she wasn't going to text me in the middle of the night or tell my girlfriend what to feel. Then she did something that felt both childish and brave. She held her hand out like we were being introduced on a group project. We shook. Her hand was cold. It made me feel less like a villain and more like a person holding another person's fear for exactly 5 seconds and then letting it go. When I walked back, my girlfriend's shoulders had dropped an inch. It looked like relief rented the space where panic had been living. On the way to the car, my dad asked if I was eating. I said I was surviving on coffee and dramatic metaphors. He said he'd make soup. He always escalates to soup like it's a boss battle. The first session with the therapist my dad knows happened in an office that had a water fountain so aggressively badly I had to pee twice before we even started. His name is Voss, which made me laugh internally because of bottled water. He's in his 50s, with a tie that looked like it used to belong to a magician. He asked me to tell him the story without the adjectives. It felt like trying to carry a mattress by myself and also like I'd been waiting for someone to ask me that my whole life. I told him about bus stops and rings we never bought and texts at 3:11 a.m. from mothers who are sometimes children. He didn't say ambiguous loss, which is what I'd been bracing for after falling down a rabbit hole at 3 a.m. last night. He said, "You are grieving a version of the future you built in your head with someone you still love who is not dead." It didn't feel like a diagnosis. It felt like someone naming the animal that's been pacing in my chest and then handing me a leash. He told me to write the letter to myself later, when my hands didn't feel like weather. He said to make a ritual if I needed one that wasn't the old kind that happened under rain at bus stops. When I told my girlfriend about it over FaceTime later, she got quiet and then asked if we could have a goodbye date that wasn't a breakup and wasn't a promise and wasn't a performance. Just a place to put the tenderness that doesn't know where to live now. I said yes because I've run out of ways to say no to kindness. We dated that night because waiting felt like making an appointment with a hurricane. It was drizzling like the sky remembered how to cry politely. We met at the bus stop where our high school still goes its way through my bones. We brought a thermos of tea and gummy bears that tasted like cough syrup. We sat. The kind of sitting where your thighs stick to the plastic and your heart remembers it has a mouth. She wore the yellow hoodie and put her feet up on the little metal bar like a kid. We didn't reenact anything. We let buses come and go. When the 23 rolled up and hissed at us like a cat, she reached for my hand and then stopped and put hers back in her lap, and I wanted to hug every neuron in her for that restraint. I gave her my spare key. It's on the stupid keychain from the street market in Lisbon that we haggled over for 20 minutes like we were buying a house. She gave me the Polaroid of the dog that's not ours with "practice dog" written on the back in Hannah's handwriting, and then a different one I didn't know existed, me sleeping on her couch last winter, mouth open, one sock halfway off my foot, a book on my chest. On the back she'd written, "Prove that you can rest." We agreed on a language we can use when we're walking too close to an edge. If one of us texts bus stop, no follow-ups, no explanations, it means we're stepping back and we'll come back when our heads don't weigh 30 pounds. We said it like packing an emergency kit. When the rain thickened, we stood and didn't kiss. It was a relief that soured in the back of my tongue. We pressed our foreheads together like we were trying to tune into the same station one last time. She said, "Thank you for living." I said, "Please don't stop." It felt like cutting a red ribbon with kindergarten scissors while the mayor watches. On the drive home, my dad called from the kitchen to ask if he should do lentils or chicken. I told him to do both, and he said that sounded ambitious and then did both anyway. My mom stayed in the bedroom. She slid a note under my door later. It was 3 lines and every letter tried to be neat. "I am sorry. I overstepped because I was afraid. I am going to talk to someone who isn't you or your father." It made something unclench. Not forgive. Not forget. Just a small loosening like a tight jar lid finally giving an inch. Partial started the next morning. The building does look like a bank. The lobby still has the old vault door, propped open like a mouth. A volunteer at a folding table checked names off with a purple pen. Family orientation happens in a room with chairs in a circle because of course it does. There were parents of all kinds. A mom with a sunburn line. A dad in a suit who looked like he was trying to fold himself into a smaller grief. A grandmother in a cardigan the color of pistachio ice cream. The facilitator asked us to say one hope and not pretend it was reasonable. I said I hoped my girlfriend would want to be here next week and next month and next year. Her dad said he hoped he could get bait enough to hold a version of his daughter that didn't look like the one he'd already memorized. The cardigan grandma said, "I hope I learn not to say phase like it's a curse." I wanted to kiss her forehead and adopt her. After, in the hallway with a bulletin board full of breathing techniques printed on pastel paper, her mom cleared her throat and did the kind of apology that doesn't ring a bell you can't unring. "I was cruel because I was terrified," she said, eyes on the linoleum. I talked like a mother whose daughter had been stolen instead of one whose daughter is fighting to stay. Hearing it didn't make me like her. It did make me believe her. That's new. We did something else that afternoon I didn't know I could do without turning into salt. We brought the box. Not like a movie with slow music and ribbons. Just a shoebox we put on her bed between us. We put our shared things in it. Ticket stubs and a dried flower I can't identify, and the ugly friendship bracelet we bought at a gas station because the cashier looked bored and I wanted to make him laugh. We didn't divide. We didn't tally. We just made a small museum that can live under her bed until both of us can visit without getting dizzy. I kept the bracelet because it's hideous and because it's the kind of thing the future me will find in a drawer and smile at like a private joke. Hannah texted me later that evening to ask if she could drop off notes from a class my girlfriend is going to miss. She did the thing where she sends the message and then immediately sends sorry if this is too much because our whole lives are baby deer on ice right now. I said thank you and told her to leave them with her dad. Then I added, do you have 5 minutes at the coffee place with the bad chairs tomorrow? No triangles. Just logistics. She said yes with a string of nervous emojis like fruits. We met at noon. The coffee place has chairs that make your hips mad and a chalkboard with quotes that make you want to set the chalkboard on fire. She brought the dog. The actual dog. Practice dog in the flesh. He sat on my shoes like I'd been mine all along and I wanted to cry into his ears. We talked. Not about falling in love with anyone. About who calls who when. About not being each other's emergency exit. About my girlfriend being a person and not a project. She told me her family is going to pretend she's going through a rebellious season and that the word season makes her feel like a decorative wreath. I told her my mom likes to terraform problems into something she can garden, which is not always helpful. We made a very boring plan. If something scary happens, I call her dad. If something not scary but weird happens, I text my dad or my therapist or the group chat with 2 guys from college who know how to play video games and ask for feelings by accident. We shook on it. The dog licked my wrist and I thought, ridiculous and true, this is the most adult I've ever been, sitting in a chair that hurts talking about boundaries while my shoes get drooled on. The internship didn't forget me. My supervisor called and asked if I'd be up for doing remote for a bit and then said something so painfully on the nose I almost laughed. He said his ex-wife came out as bi when he was 23, and he did not handle it with the elegance I seemed to be managing. I told him I was not elegant, and he said he didn't mean elegant like smooth, he meant elegant like honest without extra mess. He offered me a small side project building a feature for the app we're working on that flags when your users open the thing at 3 in the morning and asks if they want a breathing exercise or to schedule a human call. It felt like the universe telling the world's worst joke and then handing me a broom. I said yes because moving my hands helps. Back home, my dad put the good bowls on the table like you do when you don't know what else to do to make a day special. He told me mom made an appointment with someone who's not a priest and not an aunt. He said he was sleeping in the guest room for a while by choice, not punishment, so everyone could have their own bedrock. It sounded like maturity and also like grief. He asked if I wanted him at family day next week. I said yes. He smiled like something heavy finally shifted off his chest. That night, I finally wrote the letter. Not the big kind. A small one. On a sticky tab because that's what I had. I wrote, if you forget, you chose alive. Be stubborn about it. I stuck it inside her book, page 112, because that's where the tents smell like caramel and smoke and she always lingers there. I texted her where to look because treasure hunts are only fun if the person finds the treasure. She called from the landline again, because her phone dies like it owes someone money. She said, you put a note in the book. I said, I did. She said, I'm going to be stubborn. I said, good. Then she asked, do you think we'll ever be able to go to the cheap Italian place again? And I told her the truth I didn't know. Maybe someday when Parmesan doesn't taste like panic. Maybe never. She said okay like she knows now that okay can mean I respect the question mark. At 2 in the morning I woke up because the rain got serious and you always wake up when something sounds like it's trying to write on your windows. I waited for the other sounds, the bad ones, the ones my brain has started to keep a pocket open for. Nothing came. I fell asleep with the window open and the book on my face and the smell of wet pavement coming in like an apology from the sky. I dreamed about a bus that never came and I woke up not angry. That felt like winning in a way I don't have a word for yet.